I think AEW are wasting the Hurt Syndicate and have maybe wasted them already. You know, the weird approach to booking that we've seen, and I've talked about this quite a lot over the last few weeks, but the whole thing with MJF, I don't know what the hell that was, and now that it feels like that chapter of the Hurt Syndicate is now over. Like, we've had the whole thing where, you know, MJF spent weeks trying to get into the Syndicate, and then they accepted him, and then he left, and then he went off against Hangman Page and did the title shot, and then the Syndicate lost their belts after what I would say is one of the most bizarrely booked tag runs in the company's history, losing the belts to Brodito, which, you know, sure, that was fun. It was definitely unexpected. But at the same time, they still had to kind of protect the Syndicate in terms of, you know, they didn't take the pin. They were jumped by Gates of Agony. They had to end up going into the back at Forbidden Door, and then they ended up losing the belts to a different, you know, pinfall. It's such a weird way for that tag to go. And I feel like a lot of the fire behind the rumors of, you know, MVP, Shelton, and Bobby being unhappy with their booking backstage took off was because a lot of us can see little bits of that in the product itself. And I know that they got out there and nipped it in the bud. They had that whole backstage segment with MVP and Speedball addressing the rumor that they hated each other or whatever. But it doesn't really get away from the fact that, at least I would say, they've been pretty badly booked. Like, for the most part, they came in, and obviously Shelton was there first. You had MVP, then they brought in Bobby Lashley, and then great mic spots every week. MVP is phenomenal on the mic. And you had the almighty Bobby Lashley and all that kind of stuff. And like, they felt really powerful and strong, and they had a whole run of ostensibly squash matches, you know, which gave them this great dominance. Obviously, they got the belts off Private Party, and that was such a great, you know, like a confident step forward for them, where it was like, okay, we are here to make waves and we are here to do something. I also remember when they came in, there was an interview with MVP where he was being asked about, you know, why AEW, why come in? And he said that, they wanted to go to AEW because Tony Khan the general idea was they would be able to finish the story that they'd started, that they weren't able to do over on WWE, which is, you know, interesting. But I don't feel like, I feel like I'm still waiting for that to come together. Like, what is the overall story? Like, when all the MJF stuff happened, I was like, did you plan to have some random guy join your Syndicate back in the WWE? And that didn't happen, and that's why we're doing this. But then obviously it fell apart. And then they've kind of just been languishing a little bit. And I don't feel, that has extremely high caliber as these athletes are, I don't feel like we've had a single truly great Hurt Syndicate match. Like, you know, we almost got them against FTR as a straight up tag match, but obviously it became the 3-way tag match with Brodito that they lost. But we never got them. I always mentioned that they should have gone up against the Murder Machines, like Lance Archer and Brian Cage, because that would have at least been, you know, two dudes of similar stature smashing up against them. Like, I was a big fan of Brody King taking them on in the Forbidden Door match. But still, like I said, it just feels like an insane shame that we didn't get any top tier Hurt Syndicate match. Where right now, try and think of a Hurt Syndicate match that stands out. Like, I don't have any. And I don't know why they couldn't do anything more meaningful with that, whether it's on a story level with MVP, where surely, like, he must have ideas for what he wants the Syndicate to be. You know, I love that idea as well of them just being this faction that anybody can just step in and pay them for a job. Maybe that's what we're doing now that they're free from the tag belts, but I like the idea of them just popping up, switching allegiances. They're not really face or heel. And I know I've mentioned in previous weeks that, like, the comparison for me, because my reference points for wrestling are so old, they're so early 2000s, that my reference point for the Hurt Syndicate in terms of what they could be is the APA, the Acolyte Protection Agency back in WWF, where they're a business. If you've got the money, you know, you give them some money, go, hey, I need some protection. Hey, I need this guy taken out. You do that with them. And they are the Hurt Syndicate. They are a business. MVP is always saying it's not personal, it's just business. And there's just so many other ways that you could then inject them into tons of other storylines. If anything else is happening in AEW, and, you know, someone needs a helping hand, someone's going to run down and interrupt something or whatever it is, you could forever have that be the Hurt Syndicate and forever have them be this anybody can, access them kind of thing, this resource. And even some of the smaller guys on the roster could, be doing matches, or someone, could win one of those money matches where they get, like the one that Chris Statlander won the other week where she won $100,000. You could have totally made it that someone was doing one of those matches to win a certain amount of money to pay the Syndicate to protect them against a villain or protect them against someone that they were fighting or whatever. There's just so many fun, multifaceted ways that you can, thread the Syndicate and the business of the Hurt Syndicate throughout AEW, because they have such a great utility. And clearly, that's not, none of this is even talking about the wrestling itself. Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin are unbelievable wrestlers. Like, I loved watching Shelton come in and do that insane decapitating kick that he does, where it looks like he just folds a guy. That was so much fun. And again, my reference point for Shelton Benjamin was where it was him and Charlie Haas in the really old... oh my god, what was the old tag thing they had in like WWE? It was right before I stopped watching WWE for a bit, but that was what I was thinking when they signed Shelton Benjamin, where I was like, okay, is he a thing? Like, I've not seen that guy in 20 years. And then watching him come in and be like, oh, he's like 5 times the size and he's an absolute tank, and, he's athletic as well as being a hard-hitting dude, and that's awesome. But still, and then they brought Bobby in, who has like a nice dynamic alongside Shelton where they can both largely keep up with each other. But Lashley is this entire massive tank of a guy. But then again, not really booking them in a way that would, exemplify their best qualities. Even though you have this great dynamic backstage of MVP on the mic and then his 2 main hitmen, being ready for business. It's a strange beat overall. And I wonder what they're going to do going forward. Like, finally, we've got them going up against anybody who is a reputable stature or a similar stature. Like, Gates of Agony actually looked like they could go blow for blow with the Hurt Syndicate. Because I think if we ended up getting that FTR match, that would have been a proper, knockdown, drag out fight as FTR figured out a way of, bringing the Hurt Syndicate down and being able to go toe to toe with them. But again, we didn't really get that, because it was a 3-way match with Burrito. There were too many, little changes there in terms of the group chemistry that meant that it wasn't really it didn't feel like a proper, slugfest where one team is really trying to outwit the other. And so it makes me so curious about what we're doing going forward. And again, I mentioned the speedball stuff before, but the rumors that were doing the rounds were that MVP, Shelton and Bobby Lashley weren't that happy with their booking overall, which I have to assume is BS, but it did come from multiple sources. But I have to wonder if that's just because they would like to do something bigger, but the tag division is in such a weird place at the minute, and the amount of disparate tag belts that AEW has, where you've got the Ring of Honor belts and you've got the AEW belts, they get defended on each other's shows and promotions, obviously just because of how much Tony Khan is trying to control everything. It's a weird way for such a prolific tag to go. And I barely, I don't know the original incarnation in WWE. I'm going off the AEW one as to what I want to see more of. And watching the Syndicate come in and have all these dynamics, MVP on the mic, the bringing Bobby Lashley in after Shelton, really feeling like they're a threat. And then just watching that kind of fail and not really maintain stature and become a bit of a goofy side act, against MJF. And then that falling apart anyway. And just that lack of direction when it felt like when they came in, they were the most confident new act in AEW. And it's been a strange thing to watch, not peter out, but change gears and go down the box to the point where we're kind of just coasting through at the minute. And maybe, them not having the tag belts will free them up, because maybe that's the thing where they can now suddenly get involved in various other tag matches, and there's a chance that they can lose. They're yet to eat any pins. The only match that they lost was because of interference, at Forbidden Door. So there's a little bit more mileage that you can get out of them in that regard, but I want confidence to their storytelling. I want confidence to their booking, and I want consistency to the booking as well. And there's so many other factions in AEW, the Don Callis family, the Death Riders. Why are they not interacting with these other people? They're going up against the Gates of Agony because of the way that they treat Ricochet back when they first debuted, as opposed to getting stuck into fighting any members of the Callis family. Like, I would love Shelton Benjamin against Takeshita or something like that. So it leaves me very puzzled, and I just hope that it gets better soon.